I smiled across the dinner table as my sister announced she'd be moving into my house. The clinking of glasses froze midair. My mother gasped. My father looked confused. And my sister, ever the drama queen, sat there with her perfect smile like she'd just won something. Everyone looked at me. But what they didn't know was that the house she was so proudly claiming as hers. I'd already sold it 2 weeks ago. Let's rewind. I'm Olivia Grant, 32, an architect who worked my way up from practically nothing. My parents always said they were proud of me, but if you looked closely, their pride had a condition. As long as my success didn't outshine my sister, Emily, 2 years younger, perpetually unemployed, and somehow still the family favorite. Every time she failed a job, my mom had a reason. Every time she borrowed money, my dad called it support. And every time I said no, I was branded selfish. For years, I bit my tongue. I told myself family mattered more than fairness. So when I bought my first house, after years of late nights and ramen dinners, they celebrated like it was a shared achievement. Only, it wasn't. It was mine. I'd renovated it with my own hands. Every wall, every corner carried pieces of my independence. But to my family, it became just another asset that could help Emily. The first red flag came a few months ago when Mom casually asked, "Liv, you have that extra guest room, right? Emily and Tom need a place to stay for a bit." "Just until they find something." I hesitated. "Mom, they've been finding something for 2 years," she sighed dramatically. "You're being unfair. You don't even live there full-time." That was true. I traveled often for work. But it was still my house. My sanctuary. Still I caved. "Just for a few weeks," I said, and that's when the boundaries began to crumble. By the time I came back from my latest project, Emily had rearranged the furniture, repainted the walls, and left me a text saying, "Hope you don't mind. I made it feel more like home." That word, home, burned in my chest. Now, sitting at that dinner table months later, watching her sip wine and announce, "Tom and I are moving in officially. Mom and Dad think it's a great idea." Something inside me snapped into calm, calculated focus. I smiled sweetly, swirling my drink. "Oh, that's interesting," I said, voice steady, because what none of them knew was that the keys were already in someone else's hands, and the look on their faces when they found out. That was going to be priceless. The temporary stay turned permanent faster than I could unpack my suitcase. At first, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Families help each other, right? But it wasn't long before I realized Emily and her husband, Tom, had turned my home into their little kingdom. It started small. My favorite coffee mugs disappeared. My office desk was suddenly repurposed into a vanity for Emily's makeup. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from work and found movers carrying in their furniture, without anyone bothering to tell me. "Mom said it's fine," Emily chirped, waving her hand dismissively when I confronted her. "Fine?" I repeated, stunned. "It's my house," she rolled her eyes. "Technically, you're hardly here, and Mom thinks it's wasteful to let it sit empty." That was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 came in the form of a phone call. One I wasn't supposed to overhear. It was Mom. I'd walked in quietly, hearing her voice echo down the hallway. "Yes, Em, of course. I spoke to the bank already. We'll transfer it under your name when things settle. She won't make a fuss, she never does. She?" That she was me. I froze in place. "Transfer what?" "Under Emily's name." My heart pounded so loud I could barely breathe. When I stepped into the living room, Emily's face went pale. "Eavesdropping, Liv. That's not very mature." "Oh, I'm sorry," I said tightly. "Next time I'll schedule an appointment before I walk into my own house." She laughed it off, brushing past me. "You always take things so personally." But I didn't miss the flicker of guilt in her eyes. Then came red flag number 3, money. When I checked my utility bills, I noticed my auto-pay amounts had doubled. Emily and Tom had added premium cable, upgraded the internet, and somehow managed to order $600 worth of home decor. All under my account. I confronted them again. Mom's response? "Olivia, they're family. Don't nickel and dime your sister." She's been through so much. Through so much? She was living rent-free, burning through my paycheck and redecorating my house. Meanwhile, I was losing sleep, working overtime to keep up with the costs, and pretending everything was fine because every time I protested, I was the difficult one. The emotional strain was like a slow leak, subtle but constant. Every day I felt smaller in my own home. My privacy was gone. My boundaries were gone, and yet I said nothing, not because I was weak, but because a quiet part of me was watching, taking notes, waiting. I could sense it. Something much bigger was happening behind my back. I just didn't know yet how deep their betrayal went. But soon, I would. And when I did, they'd regret ever underestimating me. It happened on a Thursday evening. Rain drummed against the windows, and I was buried in blueprints at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed, an email from the county assessor's office. Subject: property tax record. Update: ownership change. Request pending. My blood ran cold. At first, I thought it was some mistake. But when I opened the attached form, my name was missing entirely. In its place, Emily and Tom Grant, listed as co-owners. My chest tightened as my eyes scanned the details. My address, my property, their names. I called the assessor's office immediately, my voice shaking. This has to be an error. I never approved a transfer. The clerk hesitated. Actually, Miss Grant, your mother submitted notarized documents showing joint ownership. It's already in process. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I hung up, my hands trembling. The air in the room felt suffocating. Mom, my own mother. I tore through my home office drawer where I kept the original deed. It was gone. The file folder was empty. That's when it hit me. The secret calls, the evasive answers, the way Emily had moved in like she owned the place. They weren't waiting for me to leave. They were quietly erasing me. The final blow came the next morning. I confronted my mother at her house. She was arranging flowers, calm as ever. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling, "did you take my property documents?" She didn't even flinch. "Oh, Olivia, don't be dramatic. You know we're just securing things for the family." "For the family?" I laughed bitterly. "Or for Emily?" Mom set the vase down carefully. "Your sister needs stability. You're always traveling. You don't even use that house properly." My throat tightened. "It's not a spare room, Mom. It's my life." Emily strolled in then, coffee in hand, smirking. "You'll thank us later." "It's better this way. You never really needed it." I stared at her, feeling my chest ache with disbelief. The sister I'd defended, helped, loaned money to, had not only stolen my home, but watched me fall apart while doing it. "You forged my signature," I whispered. Emily shrugged. Technically, Mom handled the paperwork, and Mom, my own mother, had the audacity to sigh. "Let's not ruin family over something as small as a house, Olivia." Small? That was the moment something inside me broke. I walked out of that house shaking, not from fear, but from fury. They had taken everything I'd built, twisted it into something selfish and cruel. But as I drove away, a strange calm began to settle in. If they thought I'd let them steal my life, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Because the storm they started? I was going to finish it. I didn't cry the night I discovered the betrayal. I thought I would. But the tears just wouldn't come. Instead, I sat in my car, parked outside my darkened house, staring at the place that no longer felt like mine. Every brick, every memory had been turned into a weapon against me. The hurt was raw. The kind that crawled under your skin and made breathing feel like punishment. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Don't ruin the family over something as small as a house." Small. The word hit harder than the betrayal itself. That house had been my proof. Proof that I could stand on my own. Proof that I was more than the family's responsible one. And they took it because they assumed I'd stay quiet. Because I always did. But that night, something shifted. I scrolled through my photos, Old renovation pictures of me sanding floors, painting walls, smiling despite exhaustion. Then I found one of my dad and me, taken years ago when I'd first gotten the keys. He had his arm around me, proud and beaming. He used to tell me, "Don't let anyone take credit for what you built with your own hands. Live." That memory, that voice, lit a spark deep inside me. I realized that my silence had been my biggest mistake. I thought keeping peace meant keeping love. But in my family, silence was just permission for them to keep taking. So I decided, no more silence. I started with research. Late into the night, I combed through property laws, signature verification clauses, and forgery penalties. I called a lawyer friend from college and asked one question. If someone forged ownership transfer documents, how hard would it be to prove? Her voice was steady. If you have the original deed, Olivia, you can undo everything. I didn't. They'd stolen it. But the county's digital archives might have what I needed. And suddenly I had a plan forming in my head. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because my pain finally had purpose. They thought I was fragile, emotional, predictable. They had no idea the kind of woman I'd become. I stood, grabbed my laptop, and started organizing every document, text, and receipt I'd ever exchanged with them. Every passive-aggressive message, every family favor, every expense they'd dumped on me. All of it was going to serve a new purpose now. Evidence. By sunrise, I felt different. My fear had hardened into focus. They wanted my house. They could have it, along with the consequences that came with stealing from me. Because I wasn't just going to take back what was mine, I was going to make sure they'd never forget the cost of underestimating me. Once the shock settled, the quiet work began. If this was going to be more than fury, if it was going to be real justice, I needed a plan that was patient, legal, and surgical. No screaming, no messy social media rants, just facts, witnesses, and timing. Step 1. Assemble the paper trail. I dug out every file from my laptop backup and every email from the closing. The purchase agreement, escrow transcript, wire receipts, title company confirmation, and the signed closing statement showing the buyer's LLC as the new owner. The sale had closed 2 weeks before the dinner. The deed had been recorded at the county, digital timestamps and everything. Whoever had grabbed the physical folder didn't erase the record. I made 3 certified copies and stored them with my lawyer. Step 2. Verify the forgery. The assessor's notice and the joint ownership papers smelled like a rush job. I hired a forensic document examiner recommended by my attorney. He confirmed what I suspected. The signature on the mother's authorization looked traced. The notary stamp had inconsistencies, and a timestamp on the scanned transfer didn't match the county archive. Those weren't the kinds of mistakes amateurs made by accident. They were sloppy attempts to manufacture ownership, while the real title was already in escrow. Step 3. Collect witnesses and surveillance. Neighbors matter. A woman across the street remembered seeing men remove the for sale sign and load boxes on a rainy Monday at noon. The exact date on my closing statement. The building's security camera confirmed a moving company pulling up that day. The timestamp matched. I saved the footage. I also got a short signed note from the title officer who'd emailed me a final confirmation. These small pieces would stitch together into one airtight timeline. Step 4. Bait the arrogance. They'd been careless. Secret calls, forwarded drafts, and flippant texts. I sent a neutral, perfectly polite email to Mom. "Can you forward the paperwork you used to update the county? I'm reconciling records for taxes." She obliged in seconds, and in her haste, forwarded the draft message she'd prepared for Emily explaining what to say if I asked. It read like a script. If Liv asks, just say the documents are routine. She travels a lot. Boom. Carelessness handed me evidence. Step 5. Line up counsel and exposure. My attorney prepared a demand packet, title confirmation, forensic report, surveillance stills, and the forwarded draft. We also quietly briefed a local reporter who covers property disputes. Not for clicks, but to ensure public pressure if mediation failed. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted leverage. Finally, step 6. Choose the stage. They still felt untouchable. Mom kept texting photos of Emily unpacking, smiling, triumphant. Their arrogance was my clock. I circled the date of Mom's charity luncheon, the event where all the neighbors, family friends, and the local paper would be present. It would be public, crowded, and impossible to gaslight. Late at night, I placed the binder labeled Closing and Evidence on my desk and breathed for the first time in days. The binder was heavy. So was the truth. They believed they had already won, smug in their rearranged furniture and forged paperwork. That complacency would be their undoing. When the time came, I wouldn't scream. I would show receipts, footage, and signatures in a tidy, undeniable sequence. Theirs had been a quiet theft. My reveal would be quieter still, precise, unrebuttable, and permanently closing the door on their entitlement. The charity luncheon was a sunlit affair, linen tablecloths, polite applause, and my mother at the center giving a warm, practiced speech about family values. Emily sat 2 rows back, fingers threaded with Tom's, radiant in the glow of other people's approval. They were untouchable, at least as far as anyone else could see. I felt calm in a way that surprised me. Calm because the binder on my lap was heavy with truth, and because every threaded lie they'd woven had a seam I could pull. Daniel squeezed my hand once, and I stood. "Before we begin the silent auction," I said, voice steady enough to be heard, "I have a small announcement about honesty." A few heads tilted. Mom's smile flickered with curiosity. I set the binder on the podium and clicked the laptop. The large screen behind the dais lit up, not with auction lots, but with dates, timestamps, and images. The closing statement flashed first. My signature, escrow confirmation, the buyer's LLC. Then the moving company footage, a rainy Monday, boxes loaded, a for sale sign removed, time code matching my closing. The room grew quieter. Silverware stopped clinking. Slide after slide followed. The assessor's update showing the attempted ownership change. The forensic examiner's report pointing out the trace signature and inconsistent notary stamp. A neighbor's signed note. And then, the forwarded draft email Mom had sent in haste. The one instructing Emily what to say if I asked. The line I'd saved and circled glowed on the screen. "If Liv asks, say routine paperwork. She travels a lot." The air felt cold and thin. Mom's face drained of color. Emily's composure cracked into a mask of panic. Someone whispered, "Is that?" The journalist I'd quietly briefed earlier sent a single, efficient text. Cameras pivoted, pens scratched. My lawyer rose, voice calm but lethal in its clarity. "These documents establish a timeline and probable forgery. We'll be filing for immediate injunctive relief to restore title and request criminal inquiry into the fraudulent filings." He didn't explain legalese. He didn't have to. The gasp that swept the room said everything. Neighbors who'd once smiled at Mom's charity work exchanged looks of bewilderment. An aunt I'd trusted covered her mouth. Emily stood, knocking her glass, words tumbling into a frantic defense that the evidence mercilessly cut down. Receipts matched the dates I'd cited. Security footage corroborated the movers. And the title company confirmed the sale had closed before the notarized transfer they'd filed. Emily lunged for damage control. Pleas, excuses, performative tears. Mom tried the old trope. Maternal confusion, a hint of frailty. It didn't land. The room had seen the receipts. Hard, cold proof where charm once worked. The reporter's phone screen flashed. Someone in the back started recording. When my lawyer called the county recorder as a witness, the woman on speaker confirmed what I'd already known. The deed recorded for my buyer stood. The subsequent joint ownership filings were flagged for review. Within an hour, an investigator had been requested. Within a day, the county issued a temporary hold while the matter was examined. The house that had been theirs to boast about became evidence in a case. Emily's face crumpled the way privilege looks when it loses its guardrails. She clutched at Mom's sleeve, whispering apologies that sounded like echoes in a room that suddenly remembered every slight. People who had once admired Mom's holiday parties now looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. I closed the laptop and felt a silence that wasn't empty. It was finished. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth had done the work. The smugness that had wallpapered their lives peeled away in public view, and the consequences, legal, social, and moral, began to unfold like clockwork. Walking out of that hall, the late summer light felt purer. They had tried to make my home something they could take without consequence. Instead, they'd invited witnesses into the theft, and witnesses don't forget. They'd moved in thinking they'd moved up. They were about to learn how painfully small the world gets when your lies are posted for everyone to read. 3 weeks later, my inbox was a quiet place. No frantic texts, no guilt trips, no invitations to pretend everything was fine. Silence. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. The county investigation confirmed what I already knew. The transfer documents Emily and Mom had filed were fraudulent. My home, the one I had built, renovated, and poured my life into, was finally fully and legally mine again. The buyer, bless their patience, had waited for the legal clearance to complete everything. Emily was devastated. The neighbors whispered, the charity friends recoiled, and every public mention of Mom's family values was quietly replaced with murmurs of scandal. Social media picked up the story. Articles titled, "Family Feud Over Stolen House, Sister Wins Back Property" circulated locally, and I didn't care about the clicks. I cared about the vindication. Mom called twice, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly shaky. The first was an apology, half-hearted and rehearsed. The second, 3 days later, was quieter. She didn't beg. She didn't demand. She admitted finally that she had misjudged priorities. I didn't return either call. Not because I wanted revenge, I already had it, but because some lessons are learned better from absence than confrontation. Emily tried to text me, trying charm and faux remorse, but I blocked her. There was no point. The lesson had been delivered publicly, legally, and irrevocably. They had assumed I was fragile, predictable, and compliant. They had miscalculated, and in their miscalculation, I found freedom. I threw myself back into work, designing a new project that pushed boundaries and challenged clients. I traveled for inspiration without guilt. I even bought a small, cozy apartment in the city as my personal retreat, my sanctuary, where no one could touch my peace. Most of all, I realized this. The people who try to control you with lies and privilege only have power if you let them. I didn't. Sometimes poetic justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers in the quiet satisfaction of rebuilding, reclaiming, and thriving where others tried to suffocate you. They stole what they thought was mine, and in the end, their own greed built the cage they couldn't escape. I walked out free, while they remained trapped in the mess they made. To viewers, have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved, or someone who was supposed to protect you? Did you fight back, or did you walk away? Share your story in the comments. If you felt the thrill of this revenge story, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because sometimes the sweetest justice is watching someone finally rise above betrayal.